I'm Eric Bowling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this O'Reilly Factor Special Election 2016. We begin with new developments in Hillary Clinton's so-called pay-for-play scandal and the cozy relationship between her State Department and the Clinton Foundation. In the latest twist, we've learned that 4 years ago, Cheryl Mills, then a top aide to Mrs. Clinton at the State Department, went to New York to interview candidates for a job at the Clinton Foundation. The State Department now claims the trip in question was for personal travel and not paid for with government funds, and that it complied with ethics laws. But it comes on the heels of revealing new emails showing a Clinton Foundation bigwig trying to pull strings at the State Department. Join me now from Washington, Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, which broke the email story. So, Tom, we had you on a couple of days ago talking about the other dramatic events with Clinton Foundation being tied to the State Department. Here we are on the heels of yet another one. Now, the Clinton the Clintons and the State Department both say that Cheryl Mills didn't actually secure that job for someone in New York. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. Mills went to New York to volunteer for the Clinton Foundation, even as Mrs. Clinton said that she would keep the State Department and Clinton Foundation business separate. Yet her chief of staff is involved in hiring Clinton Foundation officials. And of course, Miss Mills was also vetting requests from the Clinton Foundation, we know separately, because they were running the speaking engagements by her and her colleagues there. They were running all sorts of other requests for conflicts checks with Bill Clinton and the foundation. And she's involved in hiring people at the foundation. Did she disclose that conflict to her colleagues at the State Department? I doubt it. This is more evidence of a conflict of interest and misconduct, and it calls again into question as to why the Justice Department, if it isn't already, it hasn't aggressively pursued a criminal investigation as to what was going on there.
So, Tom, do you think, there are basically three levels of this. It's either politically foolish to do this, or it's ethically wrong to do this, or the third one being illegal to do this. Where do you think that these things lie?
Well, the illegal is the open question, and you only get the answer to that assuming a competent independent investigation. There's no doubt the ethics agreements and rules were violated and broke. Whether those violations rise to a criminal violation, I don't know, but you've got to get the investigation going in order to answer that question. And we don't have one yet, as best we can understand it. There are conflicting reports as to whether one's open, but I guarantee you this, this is all going to contribute, certainly this latest revelation is going to contribute to the pressure for another criminal investigation into the conduct of Mrs. Clinton at the State Department. Well,
we've heard now, unconfirmed, but we've heard that there are 3 offices of the FBI that recommended that a wider investigation be opened, and that Department of Justice said they weren't ready to do that. Any confirmation of that? And hey, if there are more of these emails that come out, do you think that they may rethink that?
Yeah, I think more emails are going to come out for sure, and on top of that, then there are other reports suggesting there's already investigation ongoing. Of course, Fox News has previously reported that there was an investigation, so I don't know if we can buy all of these reports that there's no investigation going on out there, because I think the administration has acted as defense counsel and promoter for the Clinton campaign. You see this in the State Department trying to explain away all these apparent conflicts and violations of the rules without any investigation.
I don't have a lot of time, but I'm just role-playing this through, and so this is all going on. Now, someone in the White House had to say, I don't like this cozy relationship between State and the Clinton Foundation. No one ever blew the whistle on that?
I wonder if the White House knew about it. Mrs. Clinton, by the way, promised this wouldn't take place because people were concerned about it, and it's the only reason she got the job, by making the promise to be a bright line between the foundation and the State Department. And within months, her foundation, her family foundation, and the State Department are working together. And now we now know her chief of staff was involved in hiring officials at the foundation. Absolute violation of her ethics pledge. And I'd be interested to know, to your point, did the White House know about what was going on?
Well, you wrote a book about that. I think there's some of the Obama and Clinton scandals, and that's coming out. Is that right?
That's right. It's called Clean House, Exposing Our Government Secrets and Lies, coming out later this month. Thanks, Eric.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much. Straight ahead, fasten your seatbelts, because up next, we'll be talking to a Clinton campaign surrogate who sees things quite differently. Right back with that. Our top story, the new developments in the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Joining us now from Washington, David Goodfriend, a surrogate for the Clinton campaign. Now, David, we want you to take a listen to what Rudy Giuliani said last night on The Factor right here.
Okay. I believe there's enough evidence now to warrant a full and complete racketeering investigation. I believe that the destruction of the emails could be argued as evidence of guilt. That is a typical argument you make in court, by the way, when you prove intent. And I believe this crime is even more substantial than the email crimes they let her off the hook for, which they never should have let her off the hook for.
David, your response?
Well, first of all, I think Rudy Giuliani is very consistent in that when he was a prosecutor himself, he really raised the indictment, the accusation, as the main event. And if you listen carefully to what he said this merits an investigation. Well, okay, that's a subjective term. I think, though, the politics of this are a little bit more complicated. The Trump campaign, which is falling further behind in the polls, is really trying to double down on this character issue, and that's where they bring in discussions about emails. I'm not sure there's anything terribly new here, but they're sticking to that theme.
Well, I think we're learning new. It's almost like a drip, drip, drip. We're learning new emails.
That's the theory. That is the theory, but the polling doesn't bear that out, Eric.
New ways to tie the Clinton Foundation to the State Department under Hillary Clinton.
But it's just like, you
don't have a problem with this, David? This cozy relationship between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. This is not a problem. It doesn't raise any red flags in your world.
So let me finish the thought. The mirror image on our side is talking about Donald Trump not releasing his tax returns, being sued for fraud by students he took advantage of. Both campaigns are focusing on character of both candidates, but I think what we're seeing in polling, and it's really becoming very clear now across the country,
I think it's polling.
Is that
stop spinning. No spin zone. Stop spinning. Stay on this. Does this cozy relationship between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton's State Department raise any red flags to a Democrat like you?
No, and I'll tell you why. Republicans in the same seat, in the same office, who had family foundations of their own, similar situations set up, and I don't believe it's fair to say that Hillary Clinton somehow should be held to a different standard.
Because she's running for president, David. She wants to be the commander-in-chief.
You asked me, does it raise
a judgment on her decision-making and her character, all of it. Hold on, let me do this. Let's do this.
That's the theory of the Trump campaign. It's not working, though.
Do you find this a coincidence or odd that Uranium One was purchased by the Russian government after making a $2.3 million contribution to various entities within the Clinton Foundation? Do you think that's interesting, coincidence, or odd?
It's terribly interesting. I think it's more interesting that the Russians hacked the DNC and fed it to the Trump campaign. I think the Russians ought to be hung up by their toenails.
Do you find it interesting or odd that Boeing dropped $2 million into the Clinton coffers and received a $2.3 billion deal with the Russians to sell them airplanes?
I get it, Eric. You're trying to say that there's corruption.
I'm not done.
Of course. You can keep going as long as you want.
I'll do one more.
The American people have already formed an opinion.
Do you find it interesting, coincidence, or odd that GE dropped somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million into a Clinton Foundation entity and secured a deal to build a multi-billion-dollar power plant with Algeria?
Now, where are your talking points on Donald Trump? It's funny you're not mentioning him.
We're talking about Hillary Clinton.
I'm talking about both, Eric. We got an election on our hands. We got two people.
This isn't a politics 2016 segment right now. This segment is Hillary Clinton 2016 segment right now.
Right. So
you don't have a problem with any of these
and Rudy Giuliani and everybody who sees bugaboos. You think, oh my God, we've got a hot one. We got a smoking gun. Guess what? These facts have been out for a long time, Eric. Law enforcement across the country has been aware of these things for a long time. The campaign is trying to change the subject away from Donald Trump losing in the polls. That's what's going on.
I just named 3. I have a list of 20 here. I would keep going.
For it, Eric. You're not changing any minds.
Here's the problem. You know what these are? These are pay to play. This is what happened.
According to Eric Bolling.
No, not according to many people. And I would love to see an investigation opened up so that law enforcement can get involved and decide whether it is truly pay to play. This is my, you're right. This is my opinion, but I have a hunch when you keep rereading into these, you might find they may also be legally pay to play, which is breaking the law.
Well, of course they might, and they might not. But the fact of the matter is law enforcement is perfectly able to look into any of this and hasn't. What does that tell you, Eric? They're not running a campaign the way Donald Trump is.
Well,
Donald Trump is losing a campaign right now.
It begs the question
so he
why.
wants to talk
you have
about
to ask
this.
the question, why haven't they? Maybe they haven't yet. Maybe they're doing it right now. We don't even know about it. Or maybe, just maybe, some of that Clinton influence may hit the highest levels of law enforcement.
And if you ask me, look, you and I are both good Americans here, and I want to say this. This is how I want to leave this with you, Eric.
Okay.
It's a much bigger deal when our enemies in Russia hack into our systems and try to change our elections. Okay. I wish you'd report
Look over
on
there.
that.
Look at the shiny object over there. David, I love you. Good talking to you, brother. Up next, Donald Trump facing some big hurdles in the battleground states. What he needs to do. In the election 2016 segment tonight, Donald Trump confronting a new reality, falling poll numbers in some critical swing states, and even the red state bastion of Utah.
We're having a tremendous problem in Utah. Now, Utah is a different place, and I don't know if is anybody here from Utah? I mean, I didn't think so. We're having a problem. I mean, because, look, it could cost us the Supreme Court. We need help in Ohio. We're very close in Ohio. Ohio is very close, but we need help. Pennsylvania's a little further off, but I think we're going to win Pennsylvania because the miners, she wants the miners out of business. She wants steel out of business. She's a disaster. She's a disaster.
And the Wall Street Journal has a brand new poll showing Hillary Clinton widening her lead in some key battleground states. In Colorado, Clinton leads Trump by 14 percentage points, 46% to 32%. In Virginia, Clinton has 46%, Trump has 33%, and in North Carolina, she's ahead 48 to 39%. And in Florida, one of the most important swing states, it's close, 44% for Clinton, 39% for Trump. So what can Donald Trump do to turn things around? With me now, Jessica Tarlov, a Democratic pollster and strategist, and from Washington, Kristen Soltis Anderson, a Republican pollster. Kristen, what do you think? I mean, polls are a snapshot in time, but when you see a trend, and the trend is the Clinton lead is widening, not greatly, but widening, how do you turn that around?
I think the number one thing Donald Trump needs to do is address these concerns about his temperament. In polls that have come out in the last week, you've got about 70% of Americans who say that the idea of Donald Trump being president makes them anxious. So even though they don't like Hillary Clinton, even though they think she's untrustworthy, they don't like her personally, they still are at least saying, well, maybe she's less of a risk than Trump. I think if he's able to sort of calm it down and get back to trying to convey that he's a guy who's all about the economy, that's his best possible path to repairing some of these really tough numbers.
Just, there are about 90 days left until the election. 20 days ago, Donald Trump was leading.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about what Hillary Clinton had to do to get back on top. And we discussed, and I know we did
what did she do? Besides the convention, but what else?
Well, the convention was a major part of what has happened here because she had out all of the major Democrats speaking for her. She had 60 people a night. We had the Khazir Khan speech, which we know really hurt Donald Trump in the long run because of his reaction to that. And she really, although I didn't think that her speech was nearly the most impressive one there, she did have that moment where she hugged Chelsea Clinton. And I know that people on both sides of the aisle were very moved by that.
She
but
played it well. So her playbook has been great for the last 20 days.
Absolutely, but he's done things that were completely avoidable. On Monday, he gave what was a pretty good economic speech. And I think when Donald Trump reads off the teleprompter and doesn't go off, an incredible amount, he needs to have some of his Trumpisms there, of course. But if he sticks to that and then the next day he doesn't go out and talk about Second Amendment folks and the day after that say that Obama was the founder of ISIS, sarcastic or not, and he admitted at a rally today that he wasn't being that sarcastic, I think that he can make progress here. But in the key issues he was winning on by a lot, the economy and terrorism, he's now within the margin of error there.
Yeah, get back to those. Kristen, so on Monday, as Jessica points out, he had this big economic unveiling, rolled out a nice plan. We talked to some of his people here. It looks like a great plan. Tuesday morning, what do you have? You have a group of Republicans saying they can never vote for Donald Trump. Policy guys, foreign policy guys saying they can't vote for Donald Trump. Thursday, another group saying they can't vote for Donald Trump. More Republicans. So in a week where he could have turned the debate back towards his economic policy, a bunch of Republicans getting in the way.
Well, and now you've got these states that are red states, places where there are plenty of Republican voters that are now making the Electoral College math even harder for Donald Trump. A state like Georgia, states like North Carolina, given the polls you just mentioned, where Trump is down by 9, and these are states that Mitt Romney won by pretty healthy margins. So if I'm Donald Trump right now, I'd be sitting down with my strategist and I'm figuring out, how do I get to 270? You know, a lot of the travel that he's got involves going to states like Wisconsin, Michigan. Some of these states, I think, are just out of reach for him. I think he's got to focus on Ohio and Florida, which are 2 states where he's closer in the polls than some of these other ones like Colorado and Virginia you mentioned, and really figure out, how do I get to that magic number 270, and just focus on that.
Jess, Kristen's right. You get Florida and Ohio locked down, and all you need is Pennsylvania or Michigan.
Right. But these are big asks right now.
But that includes you nailing down North Carolina and Virginia.
Right, where she has, in North Carolina, she has a very healthy lead there right now. And we've seen things, as Kristen pointed out, you know, South Carolina within reach there. We're talking about Arizona and obviously in Utah with all those people or whatever.
Real Clear Politics still has Hillary up by only 6.
I thought the average was a bit over 7, but yet this is not, I mean, it's not a done deal. And when the Hillary Clinton campaign sends out those emails that says, you know, this is not a done deal, he could still win this, I believe that they're serious. They've been through this before. I mean, obviously it was just in the nomination process with President Obama, but everyone thought that she was going to be the 2008 nominee, and she wasn't. Donald Trump, and the way that he's run this campaign, how unorthodox it is, the Clintons, they play regular politics, and you're running against a completely irregular candidate. So we have to be careful.
Fair enough. But you know what happens, and what happens is volatility. So you get these big swings. So Donald Trump, Kristen, is leading by 5 or 6. Now he's losing by 5 or 6. You get big volatility when you have such an, as you pointed out, a strange type of campaign on one side and the traditional campaign on the other.
Well, and you have 2 candidates that are pretty disliked. So you saw a lot of swinging over the last few weeks because the conventions kind of disrupted things one direction then the other. So the question now is, with these really tough numbers for Trump, is this the new normal, or is this still anything just residual from the conventions? I think the risk for Trump is that this has set a new baseline from which he has to try to grow. But because both of these candidates are so disliked, I mean, the best thing Donald Trump may have going for him is Hillary Clinton, and the fact that, for instance, her emails are back in the news this week. We know 60-some% think that she's untrustworthy. So even if people have doubts about him, you still have a majority that are anxious about the idea of her being president as well. I think because they are both so disliked, that's what keeps this still a potentially interesting race.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Kristen and Jessica, thank you so much. Plenty more ahead as this special edition of The Factor moves along this evening. The establishment GOP versus Donald Trump. Who needs whom more? Plus, a new Hollywood blacklist. Hear what one Republican actor says happened to him. We hope you stay tuned for those reports. In the Impact segment tonight, the establishment versus the renegade. A big show of support for Donald Trump tonight from the head of the Republican Party. Reince Priebus made a surprise appearance at a rally for Donald Trump in Erie, Pennsylvania, a day after 70 members of the GOP urged the party to drop its support.
And don't believe the garbage you read. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump, the Republican Party, all of you, we're going to put him in the White House and save this country together.
The question is, does Trump really need the party, or do they need him more? Here's what Trump told me last night.
I'm the one that's raising the money, and other people are getting to use the money that I raise. I'm putting up money for my own campaign. All I'll have to do is stop funding the Republican Party. I'm the one raising the money for them. In fact, right now I'm in Orlando. I'm going to a fundraiser for the Republican Party. So if they want to do that, they can save me a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Joining us now from Washington, Irina Shah, a GOP strategist who signed that letter, and former Congressman Jack Kingston, who is now a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Irina, I got to start with you. Why'd you sign that letter?
I signed the letter because it makes a lot of sense. I've had a lot of concerns about Mr. Trump's campaign from the beginning. From the outset, I didn't find him to be a conservative. I felt like it's our responsibility to put up someone that can beat Hillary Clinton and the Democrats in the fall, and I saw no empirical evidence pointing to that. So I've had deep concerns from the beginning, and with his behavior over the past month in particular, I really don't feel that Mr. Trump is fit for the presidency.
Do you think Hillary Clinton is?
I don't find her to be fit either. I think we have 2 very bad choices at the top of the ticket for the American public this fall.
We're down to 2. It's got to be one or the other.
It's a shame that somebody like Hillary Clinton could get away with the scandal she's able to get away with every day. If Mr. Trump were actually smart about his campaign, he would hammer her on the fact that she's out of touch with the average American woman like myself. She makes billions of dollars for different people, including Wall Street. Her speeches, we've not read those transcripts, and worse yet,
You're giving me all the reasons why not to vote for Hillary, and unfortunately, if you don't vote for Trump, you might end up with Hillary. Jack, what is the risk of not voting for Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump does not embrace the establishment. So it goes, it's par for the course that the establishment is rejecting him. Even though, Eric, they had 16 other candidates to choose from, none of them won. 14 million people voted for Donald Trump. He is our nominee. And if a conservative wants to play in November, they need to vote for the conservative, the most conservative candidate, and that would be Donald Trump. And he's the guy who's put out an economic plan now that reduces taxes, reduces regulations. He's already talked about Supreme Court nominees. He's talked about being tough on foreign policies. What does this group want? It doesn't make any sense for them to be defecting from us and become Hillary Clinton allies. It does not work. If we want to win the White House, we need to be together.
Yeah, and Rena, you look at that, as Jack points out, that economic policy, the differences between the two are vast. I mean, Donald Trump's, you may not like Donald Trump, but his economic policy is far more conservative than Hillary Clinton's.
It is a touch more conservative, but the frank part of it all is that he's still a billionaire who doesn't quite understand the average American's plight. Neither of them have made real solutions public for the middle class, and I think that's really, at this point in the game, it's a little late. I don't think Mr. Trump understands that a ground game is what will make him win the presidency. He doesn't understand that he needs the RNC more than anything. His missteps show a lack of understanding about the entire game.
What are you doing by writing a letter? Are you trying to elicit a change in Donald Trump and maybe you'll end up voting for him? Is that what this is all about?
No, that's not what it's about. I'm not trying to change Mr. Trump. He's shown us for many months he's incapable of changing. What I'm trying to do is get the RNC to understand that down ballot, he's an electoral disaster for us. I care about our majorities in the House and in the Senate, and I frankly think that he's endangering those.
All right, especially Jack, is he? I mean, he says he's raising, I think the numbers are fairly staggering, $80 million last month or $50 million the month before. A lot of that's going down ballot to down ballot races, right?
You heard Rice Previs today embrace him, give him a big bear hug. It was not a tepid endorsement. It was an absolutely RNC's there. And I know, Eric, because I'm involved with the Trump campaign and the RNC. It's fully integrated. We're moving ahead. And, let's talk about the establishment a minute. They were there for Romney. They were there for McCain. They were there for Bob Dole. It did not help them a bit. The establishment wants it their way. They want a candidate who talks nice and pretty and doesn't ruffle their feathers, and that's why they're mad at Donald Trump. He's speaking directly to that guy who's laid off in the factory. He's speaking directly to the 94 million Americans who are underemployed or unemployed. He's speaking directly to the 43 million Americans who are on food stamps, or the ones whose household income fell from $57,000 15 years ago to $53,000 today. That's why he did so well in the primary. He brought back those Reagan Democrats and those disenfranchised Republicans who got tired of the status quo establishment.
Let me bring Rena in here. Rena, so you have three groups here. Number one, you have the Trump base, you have the support for Trump. Number two, now you have the RNC. Reince Priebus is touring with Trump right now with support for Donald Trump. There's this third group here that's holding out, with just incapable of getting behind the GOP candidate, and it's the establishment Republicans. Aren't you holding back the White House in 2016 for a Republican?
Listen, Eric, the reality is that the mentality of I have to fall in line behind my party's nominee simply because he says he's one of mine, that mentality is outdated. And I want to ask the congressman this. If Hillary Clinton's message was so bad and Donald Trump's message was so strong, how come she's doing slightly better than in solid, reliable red Georgia? I don't understand that.
Rena, I'd say this. George Washington could not have stand the adverse press for the last 10 days that Donald Trump has, but it's still a tight race, which speaks to her weakness and his strength. Look at the press attack on him. Look at the unification of the left. Let's talk about the Sanders supporters. 80% of them now are on board with Hillary Clinton. They accept that this is about power. They accept that, hey, my guy didn't get there, but who's the most liberal for me? And I don't know why conservatives don't have that kind of mentality. You had 16 other choices, and the process was fair, and Donald Trump won the process, and he is clearly the most conservative one. Again, look at the economy, look at foreign policy. It's a wreck. Donald Trump is addressing those things in a conservative manner.
Okay, Rena, I'm going to give you the last word.
The congressman is putting aside the fact that Mr. Trump has brought on this adverse press himself by attacking Gold Star families. The slain soldiers' parents, regardless of their religion, was completely wrong, and Republican women are recognizing that. Instead of enjoying the 90-some percentage support that Romney and McCain and former George W. Bush did at this point in the game, he's enjoying only 72% of support from Republican women. Republican women are rejecting Mr. Trump's candidacy because his message is divisive, and he's shown that he doesn't understand the core issues of foreign policy as well as our Constitution.
All right, we're going to leave it right there, Jack and Rena. Good debate. Thank you very much. Directly ahead, a stunning new report shows just how much the media relishes every Trump controversy while playing down the Clinton ones. The Factor, we'll be right back.
15 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us for this special edition of The Factor. I'm Eric Bolling for Bill O'Reilly. And in the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, can Donald Trump ever get a fair shake from the mainstream media? Even they admit the cards are stacked against Trump.
The media, by nature, I think does lean a little left, and it is a higher educated, more liberal. I think they were going along for the ride because they had to, but then something else is kicking in now, and I think all of that is what's happening, and what I call backing him into a media.
What is so...
In case you missed that, Donnie Joyce said they're backing Trump into a media corner. Our friends over at the Media Research Center have been documenting the pattern of bias in the campaign coverage. Joining me now from Reston, Virginia, Tim Graham, Director of the Media Analysis at that organization. So, Tim, the number we had you on earlier in the week, and the numbers were this, and they went to this, and now they're this. I'm widening the gap.
Yeah, it went from 4-1 to 5-1 to 7-1 in terms of them beating up on Trump over the Second Amendment people comments versus how they really didn't want to talk about the father of Omar Mateen, the mass murdering terrorist. We found the same thing in the newspapers, actually. It was actually even worse because the New York Times and the Washington Post both had hammered Trump in front page stories and top staff editorials into the muck with Donald Trump, and then you couldn't find any mention of Omar Mateen in those papers. The Washington Post actually had like 2 sentences deep in a story on the Zika virus. It's comical. And I think, yes, when you look at what Donnie Joyce was saying was, well, we felt forced to cover Donald one way when he was in the Republican primary, but now that it's the general election, our conscience is getting the better of us.
Now, this one's jumped out. I mean, the networks gave double the coverage of the Trump Tower cup climber than they did of Hillary's email scandal.
Yeah, this latest story about how the emails between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation show this kind of coordination like they're both part of Clinton Incorporated. They were just giving it 30 seconds here and 30 seconds there in the middle of their Trump is so losing stories. But yeah, they gave 5 minutes the other morning to a guy climbing Trump Tower with suction cups. It just shows you, I mean, they're unserious shows, and they're seriously not interested in the kind of stories that make the Clintons look bad. They're just not interested in that.
Now, do you do research into why this is happening, why the massive bias? You have numbers on the percentage of on-air hosts that are liberal and, let's say, news directors whom are liberal?
Well, we used to have those. Back in the day, they used to do polls. Guess who decided they did not want to be subjected to polls? The last really reliable number I remember we were all talking about was in 1992, where they found 92% said they voted for Clinton, 7% said they voted for George H.W. Bush, and I don't believe that number. I think Clinton's number was higher than 92%. That's the kind of press that we have. When I was in the White House press corps in 2001, I knew that everyone around me did not vote for George W. Bush. And so did he.
Yeah, but it comes all the way down from the top. It comes from, the upper levels of management to news directors, editorial people, right on to people in front of the camera, right?
Yes, and that's important, again, in this day and age that you have the Disney Corporation. You'd assume that's conservative? No. The Disney Corporation, stock full of liberal Democrats. You can see it in their donation records. Comcast owns NBC Universal, the largest pile of donors to Barack Obama in the media world. So yes, media companies today, the hard leftists would try to tell you that all the media corporations are capitalists, therefore they'd be Trumpers. They're not. These are media companies today, are liberal Democrats. They're very diversity conscious, so of course they don't like Donald Trump at all.
All right, Tim, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much. Next up, do we all need to get a sense of humor? Donald Trump now saying he was being sarcastic when he called the president the founder of ISIS. We'll take a look at that in a moment. In the personal story segment tonight, sarcasm on the campaign trail. During several rallies and appearances over the past few days, Donald Trump caused quite a stir by accusing President Obama of being, quote, the founder of ISIS. But now Mr. Trump is saying this.
Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Then, but not that sarcastic, to be honest with you. And they all said, he should not say that. That is not. They should call him an enabler. Call him an enabler. He's an enabler. I said, that doesn't sound the same. He's an enabler. People are going to say, these people are the worst. But listen, so I said the founder of ISIS. And in fact, very soon he's going over to pick up his most valuable player award. Did I say that? Right? I say it all the time. So they knew I was being sarcastic, but now they're analyzing. Did I really mean that? How could I say that?
Joining us now from Stockbridge, Georgia, former presidential candidate Herman Cain, now a Fox News contributor and author of the book, The Right Solutions. Mr. Cain, thanks for joining us. So everyone on the left, everyone past the media is worried about Donald Trump's words. They say words matter, words matter. How about Hillary Clinton's actions?
Words do matter, but the liberal media better get used to the fact that Donald Trump sometimes uses edgy metaphors. And he came back and said, actually, he didn't mean it literally. Anybody with any brains would have figured that out. But if you go back and look at the facts, when President Obama took office, ISIS did not exist. ISIS grew because he announced the withdrawal from Iraq. ISIS grew because we were pulling out our troops. So factually, he is the one who stimulated the rise of ISIS. And get used to the fact that Donald Trump is going to use edgy metaphors. That's all it is to it. He has a sense of humor, Eric.
Yeah, and okay, but there were two of them this week. We had the Second Amendment comments.
Yes.
And then we had this one. I don't know, maybe he should maybe stop being so edgy.
Well, let me talk about the Second Amendment one. That's a perfect example. The liberal media put words in his mouth. That's what they wanted the people to hear, because as you know, perception is 50% of this whole thing about painting the picture of a president. And this is what they wanted to be what he meant. He didn't mean that. He didn't say that. They put words in his mouth. And so all of a sudden you had this furor over what the media thought he meant and he insinuated. That's what's wrong with the way the liberal media is treating this campaign. As a good friend of mine pointed out, there are two presidential races going on. The one through the lens of the media that the liberals are trying to control, and the one on the ground. The one on the ground is what's causing Donald Trump to continue to be popular amongst the working people.
But Herman, are some of these provocative words, are the polls reacting to this?
Yes, they're reacting to this because this is what the liberal media is feeding to the public. I don't believe these polls, Eric. What they're trying to do, and I've looked at some of the polls, and I read all the way to the end. If they don't tell me how many were in the sample, what the distribution was amongst Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, and it's less than 1,000, and they don't tell me the distribution, I don't want to believe the poll. But they take the headline that the pollsters put out there and say, oh, wow, Hillary Clinton is beating Trump in all of these polls. She's not beating him on the ground. Well, she might be beating him in terms of what the media wants people to believe.
Right, but these are two different stories. So either acting.
There's something out there that can be serious, even fatal to infants.
Or it doesn't matter. So I'm trying to figure where the polls are skewed. Is maybe your second opinion right there. So which one is it? Are they reacting to him or are they skewed?
I think they're skewed. And let me give you an example. Reuters the other day came out with a poll that said that Hillary Clinton had a lead. And another pollster, basically pointed out the fact that they oversampled on Democrats. They had about 150 more Democrats in the poll than they did Republicans. How do you think it's going to come out? It's going to come out more in favor of Hillary Clinton. Pat Cadell was the one who made the comment and made the initial observation. So if we don't know what the distribution is in these polls, I don't believe them, because I believe that a lot of the polls are trying to tell the public a foregone conclusion of what they want people to believe, so they will not go to polls and vote, and so they can become down on Donald Trump. And this has gotten even worse once we've gotten into the general election mode of Trump versus Clinton.
Yeah, you certainly get a constant feed of that one direction. Herman, I wanted to talk to you about the Donald Trump's economic plan versus Hillary Clinton's, but we ran out of time. Maybe next time. Mr. Kane, thank you so much. Back in a moment, an actor says he's being blacklisted in Hollywood because he's supporting Donald Trump. You'll hear that whole story, and it's surprising, next. In the Back of the Book segment tonight, blacklisted in Hollywood for backing Donald Trump. Actor Antonio Sabato Jr. is one of the few people in Tinseltown openly supporting the Trump campaign. Sabato spoke to the Republican National Convention last month, and since then, the soap opera star says he's been cut off from working. I recently spoke to Antonio Sabato Jr. and asked him to respond to this soundbite.
I don't believe that the guy is a Christian. I don't believe he follows the God that I love and the Jesus that I love.
Why is it that you don't believe that President Obama is Christian? This is the man who regularly attends church services with his family.
No, he does not. Actually, he does not attend church. He actually has never talked about Jesus Christ once. I have met a lot of Christians. I know Christians. I am one, and I don't believe he is.
So, Antonio, do you think, that's pretty provocative commentary right there. Maybe that has something to do with your having a tough time getting some gigs.
Well, listen, the liberals probably should be on my side, because if I call our president Muslim, that should be good for them. But the truth of the matter is the president can be a Christian one day, he can be a Muslim another day. He chooses. So he's really good at choosing what he can be. So actually, I should rephrase that, and he can be anything you want him to be, depending on his policies.
Sure. So tell me about what kind of gigs are you getting turned down that you may have been getting prior to the RNC?
Well, Eric, when I got back from the RNC, I had two projects lined up, and when I talked to Variety, it was just we talked about everything. We talked about me being, my mother's Jewish. We talked about my great-grandparents being in Auschwitz. We talked about my heritage. We talked about where I came from, my politics. We talked about everything. But one of the incidents that I talked about was when I got back from the RNC, I had two projects lined up in Hollywood, and all of a sudden, when they heard me speak about being on Trump's side, that those projects are out and they were not going to hire me again. Now, I'm not blacklisted from the entire, that's what they want to do. The liberal media wants to just put blacklisted, I'm done, this is it, it's over, but it's not true. I know a lot of casting directors, a lot of people who will hire me.
So can I just talk about these two projects? What did they say? You were in line, or you had the jobs and then they said, poof, the project went away?
Job,
or did they replace you with someone else?
Yeah, they went away completely. No, they went away completely. They actually said, we went back to them and we said, listen, we're ready. We can shoot these things. I think one was in August, the other one was in September, and they said we're not gonna hire him. And
commercials?
It was a matter of if I didn't go. No, this was movies. One was a movie of the week. The other one was an episodic on a TV show. But I've been working as an actor, believe it or not, for about, over 30 years. That's how I do, I make a living being in this industry. And sometimes when you talk about the left or you support somebody like Donald Trump, all of a sudden there's I don't say the whole business, but there's a good size that they're very, to the left. And,
it's no secret Hollywood is wildly liberal, skews far left. Is it anti-Obama that's giving you such headaches, or the pro-Trump side?
I don't think it's anti-Obama. I think anything to do with the Republican Party, I think anything to do that, you're against Hillary or Obama or whatever. I know people who were at the RNC, celebrities that I know, actors that I know, who did not speak, but they were there, and they get some stuff in return that is not so good. But so you want to keep quiet. But I stand to my ground, to my beliefs, and we'll go from there. It's all good.
Last question. You didn't see this coming, though? You didn't see that after speaking with a high-profile speaking spot at the RNC, you didn't see that Hollywood was going to push back?
I really don't care. I mean, it's a matter of my beliefs, my integrity. When I sleep at night, I believe that what I say is right to who I am. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to change people's minds. There are going to be people who are going to stay with me, and I have a great family. I believe in the greatest Jesus Christ. I'm good to go, man. So, I mean, it is what it is. I believe Trump is going to be our next president. I hope he is.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Antonio Sabato Jr. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
And that's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor, and thanks for joining me all this week while Bill was out. But have no fear, Bill O'Reilly will be back on Monday to make The Factor great again. I'm Eric Bolling, and please remember the spin stops here because we're looking out for